I'm gonna be doing some actual PowerShell for once. Fancy that. Been working on a little project here this weekend. Just doing a module builder, right? Like we don't have enough module builders in the community, right? My apologies for adding yet another one. But yeah, so at work I've been working on a module building pipeline. It's portable so we can reuse it over and over again with a bunch of modules. And I learned a lot of lessons from it. I wanted something similar because this started because I wanted to go back and work on PSMekBuilder, and my build pipeline for that is just so painful. Can't really do what I want with it. It was one of my first CI/CD pipelines, so it's pretty below average in terms of quality for pipelines that I'm used to at this point. And it's a pretty big pain point for working in the project when the pipeline is basically crap. So I was gonna just redo the one for that one, and then I was like, you know what, why don't I just redo all of my modules? Because there's a lot of things on my work module builder that I'd like to use in my private ones, and a lot of things in my private ones that I'd like to get moved into my work ones as well. So I've talked with several people about the one that we have internally, and I can't open source it. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm not copying and pasting code from that either. So I'm kind of reinventing the wheel on some of the things, but they're not exactly like secretive arts or anything like that. It's just you know, what we use internally, and I can't really open source it anyways without doing a lot of heavy modification to make it not specific to my employer. So I figured I'd start from scratch from this, and I know that there's a bunch of other module builders out there, including Module Builder itself, which is from POSHcode, and something that, you know, I've helped kind of, I haven't done any coding on it, but I've at least sat in on some of the design meetings for it, and you know, helped out with a little bit, but I have some slight philosophical differences with the way that the module is done. Nothing too big, right? For the most part, I agree with a lot of what we've done there, but I have a very opinionated way of doing modules, so that's why this module builder I'm working on is going to be referred to as an opinionated implementation. So just to start off with what's going on so far is I have this repository set up, PSMekBuilder or PSMekBuilder. I thought that was a decent name. I really don't plan for anyone in the community to adopt this. I'm not pushing this out there as like use this as your module builder. It's just what I'll be using myself, and it is very heavily inspired by our work in the module builder project under POSHcode, and also by my previous pipelines and by my work pipeline. So yeah, so there it is. It's PSMekBuilder, and as I said, the description of it is an opinionated implementation of a PowerShell module building framework. So that's what I've been working on this weekend, and I figured that I would start sharing it now that I'm like in the middle of doing some interesting work on it. A lot of the beginning, the genesis of it is pretty boring stuff, so I didn't feel like sharing it. That and like I was having some various interruptions and things like that, and it just would have made for some poor streaming. So now let's get into the code base, and I'll go with where I'm at so far. The code is pretty massive already. So we've got, if we pay attention just to the file layout right now, folder layout, there's a build folder, and in that there's our build PS1. This is our entry point for invoke build. It basically does some dot sourcing of tasks in here. So these task files are the tasks that are part of the build process. So we've got things like initialize, which sets up the environment. It basically just sets a bunch of variables, and then it also populates the PS module path with a local PS module path where we save dependencies. Because dependency injection is part of this. There's a build module task, which other than setting the phase to build, basically calls a bunch of other tasks to run. There's a clean task to clean up the build output, clean all task, which will also take care of all the cached dependencies that we have. The copy module assets, copy base files, and copy source files are all part of basically compiling the module into the bin folders where it gets put out locally. But that's basically what that's doing. We support, I support an assets folder inside the module, and that just puts raw stuff, since you could like copy over images or templates or wherever you want. So basically it's just a folder that'll exist inside the module that has a bunch of files that your module will use that are not actually PowerShell related. Create paths task, which basically creates any of the directories that we need, or more likely just ensures that they're already there. It's kind of idempotent, so it doesn't matter. You can run it multiple times. And then where I'm starting to work now is on import dependencies and install dependencies PS. And the reason for that is that I was getting to here update, export functions, and aliases. And this chunk of code here is responsible for going through the public files. So underneath source, you basically put any kind of folder file structure you want in there, so long as you have .ps1 in them, and then inside there's functions. And instead of using the file name to determine what functions you have, I actually do an AST crawl of all of the files in your public folder. This allows me to get a more accurate feed on all the functions. It also lets me pull in the aliases, for example. So if you've got test stuff and you've got alias and it's public, we automatically export the aliases that you defined on the publics. So after this is done, it needs to actually update the compiled manifest. So the output manifest. So there's a couple of pieces to it, right? We need to update the exported functions, the exported aliases, and then also the exported, not exported, the version. We'll have to do a version bump. And then another thing is that it'll also inject the dependencies that the module has. So in the config here, I have this dependency JSON, and what this does is this houses the dependencies that the project has. So it's just a JSON file, and this one is the PowerShell dependencies. So right now I'm going to be taking in configuration so that I can update the manifest. I think that's probably the best module to do it. It's lightweight enough for it. And then phases. So this is part of the build, but it is part of like updating the module manifest with what was done if I actually use configuration in the module. The phase could also be like manifest. I don't know, I haven't decided how that'll do. And that will update it in the manifest as well. And I could probably do different things like manifest required, manifest minimum. But the idea is that you can have multiple. So if I need 2 different versions of configuration, so like I needed 131 for building, but I need to actually do like 130 inside the include for whatever reason, I could copy that and make sure they had different phases, and they'll be pulled in the right direction. So in the tasks folder here, in the install dependencies PS is where I was starting on this. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. But I'll go at kind of the overview of how the module gets structured. So this module itself uses itself to build itself, right? Like it's kind of a meta module in that. The idea is that this will eventually have this module itself will have functions to create modules like this. So you don't have to worry about setting up all the framework, and we'll export a bunch of YAML files under the build so that you can do it both in like AppVeyor or Travis CI or Azure DevOps, and the steps will already be laid out, and that way like you can kind of really quickly get the modules scaffolding up and running, start adding code to it, and then choose your CI and just run with it. That's my goal with this module. So the build, we went through all of that, what's in there, the config. Right now it just houses the dependency JSON, which is used to track all the dependencies in the project. The idea is that this is a single source of all dependencies in the project. There's a docs folder, which right now just has some documentation about the layout that we're going over right now and how that works. This PS module folder is created by the project to temporarily store the modules that it needs to run. So instead of like installing the modules in your current user or your system account, the way that I prefer to do it is that I actually save the module inside this PS module folder, and I add this to the task when all the things are running in here. That way, like, if you want to, you can go out and install the modules in your local system, but I'm not going to force that on you. But I am going to make this easy for us to clean up and not have to pollute your module environment, so everything kind of stays here. So it's also in the git ignore, so it doesn't actually get committed back. Bin is also the same thing. It's automatically generated during the process, and that stores the kind of output of the build process. The scripts folder is a folder just for using scripts that you use inside the project. It has nothing to do with the build. Nothing in there will be included in the build, but if you have some, specific scripts that would be helpful for either building, deploying, or whatever you want to do with your module, this is where you put like your own kind of scripts. For example, I included in here how I created the initial manifest and how I published the initial module to the gallery. So I created basically a dummy module that didn't export any functions to kind of use as a placeholder in the gallery until I can have something that's got some teeth in it. That way no one gets any funny ideas out there and starts putting a PSMekBuilder in the gallery and keeping me from using my own name for that. So the source folder is where your actual modules go, and underneath it there is the name. Hi Adele. I'm so happy that you used that. That's no one, being Mark, you would figure that I would get more the room references, but I don't. It's very sad. So underneath source, you need to, this is why this is an opinionated implementation, by the way. Things have to be in a certain place. So it's not like you can just pick and choose where these locations are and configure them. No, everything is determined based off of the root of the module source. Yeah, yeah. Mech is for Marky Kraus. MekBuilder. I used to use MEK in a lot of stuff in Python when I was doing it. I haven't really kept that up in PowerShell, but I figured since this one is like 100% my opinion of how modules should be done, I should probably put my name in it somehow. So yeah, the folder underneath source needs to have the name of your module. And then underneath that's where you store your PSD1. And this is not the PSD1 that gets put directly into your module. It gets updated. So this is kind of like a scaffolding. Functions to export should be empty. Aliases to export should be empty. Pretty much all this stuff should be empty because nested modules should never happen in here. With this kind of module, because it's opinionated, you never do that. I could actually remove that. Scripts to process never gets used. Required modules gets automatically updated, so that doesn't need to be filled out here. You could fill out some of these other things if you wanted to. I'm not. PS compatible additions, that could be filled out as well. I haven't done that. And then the private data can be filled out. One of the functions that this module export will create this initially for you, and import this data with things that you actually define during that process. So the PSM1 is kind of the root module for it. It is where the run before code goes. So it's this will be basically before all the classes, all the enums and all the functions are defined. If you need to do some loading code, I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to put some kind of like post file. I can't really think of a reason to do that, but I don't know. So everything in this will be copied in first into the module, and then enums will be copied next. So that's where you could do some enums. So you do one file per enum. So if I do something like my enum here, and then did enum, my enum, like that. This would get put in first. I'm just gonna fill these out with some new stuff just to have this. Classes would be added in next. So we do class, my class, and do my class. Just so that's there. Assets is where you can put anything that your module will consume that's not actually PowerShell code. So if you have like images or templates or pretty much anything, they would go in here, and they will also be copied into the assets folder underneath your module, so you could access them at PS script root assets inside your module. So I'll just add a folder here with a file in it, and also another one here. Hello, Boom Doctor. Thanks for the follow. So that'll give some guidance there. I've got a couple of private, public ones here. I'm going to move this one into private, and just kind of get rid of this. We need extra here, and rename this. So like the best practice for this module, which isn't enforced but is like a good idea when you're doing it, would be like making sure the file name matches the function name and that there's only ever one function in it. You can put some folders underneath it because it'll recursively go. Same for classes and enums if you want to group them together however you want. Same with assets. So anyways, that since there's like some stuff there, we'd want to actually like build it up, and I guess I can show that off right quick. Maybe come in here. There is build module. Will probably call this. I need to look at build tasks, build module, initialize, install dependencies. I'm going to take this out for now. And why is this showing that there's an error? Ah, missing a comma before I go on with these. That should fix those. There's another one here. Alright, so to save this. I don't know why that's not saved. Save this too. Alright, to kind of build it, I can run invoke build against the file and then pass it in the clean and the build module tasks. We get a whole bunch of output here, but basically the initialize task is just setting up a bunch of variables that's going to be consumed by other tasks in the project. I did clean, so it removed everything underneath the bin folder, which there wasn't anything, so it's kind of empty. It creates the paths, so it created a bin folder, module folder, PS module folder. Copied over the base files, so PSM1, PSD1, and then it started copying source files in. So we can see that source was copied into the PSM1 file, and then it's copying assets into the asset directory. So if we go back in here and look in the bin folder, we can kind of see that it created this modules, and underneath there it created our top level module folder. The assets got copied in to there, and then there's a PSD1 that's basically what we've already done so far, so it's not updating it yet because that's where I was getting stuck at. And then here is the PSM1 file that's compiled, so enums, classes, private functions, and then public functions. So that's kind of what it does. So the piece that I'm at right now is building dependencies. So in let's go back to build model. Make sure I have install dependencies. So this install dependencies task is kind of a top level task. I've learned that it's a good idea to use these kind of general names for tasks and actually call out to more specific things, because let's say that I'm running this in a Windows Server environment and I also need to install some Windows features in order to make certain commands available in PowerShell. I would need a different, I would need to add on install dependencies Windows feature, for example, and I would ensure that they get installed. So anyways, this task is right now only calling install dependencies PS, which is kind of a waste, but c'est la vie. So this is the just install dependencies PS task so far. Before I do that though, I need to put this back into, I need this after create paths. All right, that way it's there for later. So the install dependencies PS does import dependency config. It relies on that. So import dependency config basically pulls in that JSON file and converts it to converts from JSON into the PowerShell object and stores it in a build variable. And the install PS dependencies then is going to install dependencies PS rather. It's going to install PowerShell dependencies for phase, blah blah blah. It checks to see if there is any PowerShell dependencies defined, and if it's not there, it just skips. Other than that, we need to see if the phase on each one of the dependencies is there. So again, this dependency JSON looks like this. So it's going to call into the PowerShell, which is an array. So it's going to get each one of these. Right now there's only the one, but we need to get that in there. And the first thing we need to do is make sure that the phase matches. Oh, I cannot take. Contains phase. Is not required in this phase. Skipping. Dependencies.name, and then continue, so that we go to the next one in the for each loop. So the reason why my build PS1 was all red earlier is because I've added in all of these additional parameters that I need to pass in. So there's a couple things that you might want to do in a build pipeline. You might want to publish to a private feed in addition to the PowerShell gallery, especially if you're doing development work and you don't feel like pushing every single dev build out to the PowerShell gallery. It's kind of wasteful. Unless you're doing some kind of like preview release or something like that, you definitely don't want every single dev build going to the PowerShell gallery. That's just, it's poor citizenship right there. So what I was doing was I was adding in these things. So the PS repository name would be the name of the repository that's set. PS repository URL is the publish and the source location URL that's used. The PS repository auth method is the way in which you authenticate, because you might have, like, Azure DevOps uses basic authentication, which is username and password, and the other way is API key. So it might have an API key required to publish to it. So you kind of support that, or it might be like wide open and internally you might be able to publish and pull from it without any kind of problems. So that's all three possibilities, so I have to support them all. And by default, I want this to like have nothing, but that means that in my initialize, I need to see if this is empty, and if it is, I need to populate it with none. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I just deal with that in the thing. Anyways, so I need to add these. I need to add their. I need to add them to the output here. We're definitely not going to output secrets. So like PS Gallery API key, we're not going to output that directly. We're just going to say if it's present. I'm just going to do present. I don't need all of that. Just do string is null or white space. Just kind of wrap that up. So we'll see if the PS Gallery API key is present, but we won't display it. PS repository name we will display, it's not a secret. Do the same with PS repository URL. Again, these are for a secondary repository that isn't the PowerShell gallery. I just like to have my initialize phase show all of the settings that are in the environment. That way when you're doing this in the remote CI, you get a better idea of what was actually set, so that you can troubleshoot CI issues. We can show the user. It's not a secret. Password, we can see if it's present. So we should probably. The same with API key. We need to update this one to that. All right. So that's that goodness. Just giving us some details here, because in order to install the dependencies, you have to install the dependencies which are the galleries. So you might have to pull some stuff from your internal gallery. Let's say that you depend on a private module that you're not publishing to the gallery or haven't published to the gallery yet, but you still need to build. So you might need to pull that in. So that means that we have to register the repository first. We have to do this idempotently because we can't have it erroring if the repository already exists. We need it to be able to just install and be okay. So I'm going to do file for a task, register PS repository. Task.ps1. Alright, and then task. Should have copied the name. I spell register wrong. That's awesome. Wish I would get spelling hints while naming the files too. That'd be fantastic. Oh, resistor. What did I do? Register. There you go. All right. So this depends on initialize. Initialize. And I could probably do an if here. Resistor is futile, it is. I could probably do an if. Is it like if? Do I not have that one? Let me import dot invoke build. I think the syntax for task that it's showing right now was from the Sake module. Alright, there we go. If not so not okay, so we don't want to do this if the it's null or white space is a little safer. Probably just do not on it. Let's do that. If not, script. Task. So they don't supply a PS repository name. We want to skip this because it's totally not worth running. And that way it won't blow up locally if you're trying to run it and you don't care about this task. I guarantee you like 90% of the time people aren't going to care about having a second repository. That's my thing. Alright, so got this just like spirals out of control. It's like, oh, I just need to import configure so that I can run like 2 commands in order to update the manifest. Let me just create 40 tasks to make that. Sounds like a lot, but really the benefit is that this runs these tasks can be reused for other things. So not a bad idea. Alright, I'm going to take a quick break here, step away for a moment, and I will be right back. All right, I'm back. So thinking about this, I don't want not here. I want it to run if this is present. Sharing repository. So don't do that. We use regular in here, and then we want URL. So first thing we need to do is we need to get PS repository. PS repository showing up 100 times. That's awesome. Do name here. Error action, silently continue. Now, I can never remember with these if like a non-existent one gives you some kind of terminating error or what, so check with the repository name of nolos existo. Or existo. Alright, so that comes back with nothing. Good. And so there's one thing we do need to do is that we need to look at the source location and publish location on the repository. So if PS repository, and so if this is something and the dots source location not equal basically, we want to make sure that if it's got that name but it doesn't have that URL, we need to remove it. Always need lots of output in the as far as invalid source location 1. Expected 2. F. Name source location, and because these could be null for whatever reason, somebody doing some direct edits to their configuration or something. So this will pop out a message saying that source location is invalid and that we need to do this. So name dash, that's it, right? Verbose. We'll add verbose for good measure. I don't think it provides much. So the next thing to do is to skip if it does match. Could do else on this. Just I'll do that. PS repository already exists. Skipping. Doesn't exist skipping. It exists, so we are skipping. If somebody can find some skipping PS repositories, that'd be neat. I'd pay good money to see that. So put in the name. Wait, I need else if. I hate these. It's like a bunch of different things. Is PowerShell else if one word, 2 words? 2, okay. Maybe? It's 1 word, but you have to have logic. Too many languages in my head. I can never remember which ones are else if, elif, else space if. Sweet Adil, you are a savior, man. This is so ugly. I should do this one first. Yeah, I'm gonna do this first because I can do away with some nesting and extra else ifing. See, if PS repository and PS repository source location equals that, PS repository already needs skipping return. So we don't need to do anything, it already exists. And I can do some more stuff down here. So if this exists and this is bad, unregister it. So at this point, when we get to this point in the code, the PS repository should not exist. So now I can just like register the PS repository in theory. But I have to do something. If PS, I wish these all like automatically showed up. That'd be fantastic. If I did this all in one file, they would. But then developing becomes a huge pain in the ass. we like on my work pipeline, we originally had all of the tasks in one file, and it was a nightmare. Like we couldn't develop on it in any sane way. Everything that you do is just like break whatever everyone else is doing. So we had to move everything out to separate files. So if PS repository user and PS repository password. I'm not gonna lie, this song that's playing right now is not so bad. Upside Down by Miracle of Sound on level 8. Huh. Oh, then it pops in with some lyrics. Maybe not. So, if a username and password is provided, this is so painful about PowerShell get and registering repositories that if they have a username and password and you don't supply it, it'll fail to register the repository, even though it doesn't actually have to do anything with the repository at that point. But I guess it tries to check it or something, and it'll result in an error. I don't know. It's such a waste. So like, if the username and password is supplied, and this is plain text because it should be coming from a secure environment variable. All this is supposed to run inside CI, but anyways, we have to basically create a credential and then add it to the parameters. But I'm going to build out the parameters first for register. So name equals PS repository name. Source location. This should be publish location. So if I do register PS repository, okay, name, source location, publish location. We're not doing script. Credential we know. Default no. Installation policy. Just copy this. Want it to be trusted. I guess that's another thing that I need to do up here. So I don't want to deal with no stupid trust crap on any of this. Like, so much of this is because so much of this code right now is because PS PowerShell get is less than ideal. I'm trying to be political here. And then also like installing dependencies with something like PSDepend might sound easier until you start working with some of the scenarios that I've run into at work. And PSDepend couldn't work for us anymore, so we had to create our own dependency injection, which is kind of what you're seeing me rework here from scratch. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. So if PowerShell get and PSDepend could do everything I needed it to, all this code would be like 2 lines. But unfortunately, it's not the case. And again, this is an opinionated implementation of a build module, so I could probably finagle both of those to work the way that they should. But because they don't work in the way that I think they should, yeah. Warren had a really good point that there really needs to be some work done on dependency management in PowerShell. And I didn't really understand where he was coming from until I started dealing with more complex things. Like if you're just like making public modules that get published to the gallery and you only ever use other modules from the gallery, like PSDepend is like perfect for that. It's very easy use case, but I'm trying to design this framework to work for both my private and my public modules, and that means that I have to kind of step out of the bounds. And now I'm starting to run into the things that Warren was warning about, and I had no clue what he was talking about until I ran into them. So I definitely agree with Warren that somebody in the either community or PowerShell team really needs to step up and create some dependency management, because as we start getting into more, I hate to use mature or complex or advanced because those sound like condescending, but more complex environments, I'll try to use that one. That's the least bad sounding. More complex environments, the current tools available are not going to cut it. And we'll find people reinventing the wheel until somebody comes up with something that's ubiquitous. But yeah, that's end of rant there. So this is, I need to build the credential. Secure pass is going to take in PS repository password to convert to secure string. Oh God. Sometimes this automatic loading of modules for tab completion is painful. And how did the Azure RM modules get installed on my system? That's weird. I definitely removed Azure RM on this system, and I'm only using AZ. But that's a rabbit hole I don't feel like going down right now. Alright, so yeah, PS Script Analyzer would probably complain about this, but you know, so much of my code is taking like things that aren't secure and making them secure with this command. Like, you have no choice but to get this as plain text, because you can't accept a secure string in CI. It doesn't work like that, right? Like, there's no way to do that. And then there's things like getting OAuth tokens from an endpoint and converting it to a secure string so you can store it on an object, so it's not like just plain text sitting around, right? Those are like secure operations for this. Like, 9 times out of 10, I'm doing the right thing with this command. And PSSA's like default rules are like, hey man, why are you doing convert to secure string? Stop being bad. Security. All right, so. Oh, so I went. Got really weird really fast. So, yeah, I'm already checking for existence of something in there. I'm also of the opinion that PS credentials should take null or empty strings for the username. Or does it matter if there's no username? I don't know. When you do PS credential empty, it doesn't have a username set. So you can obviously have PS credentials without a username. But if you try to supply nothing here, it'll error. It's weird. All right. I'm going to add verbose onto this params as well. So we get all of the stuffs. Register dash PS repository params. All right. Let's get some more logging output there, saying that we're logging this repository at this one here. We put some things here. Secure pass. That's what I need to put inside the PS credential object so that I actually get there. I'm gonna put a message in here that so good deal there. Alright, so this will register a PS repository if that's done. So we need to add this into our box of tricks here for installed dependencies. And we'll put that before there. Register PS depository. What did I say this one depends on? Installed PS. Port dependency config. Yeah, that should be fine. Alright, so now we can look at installing things here. We have to do some logic that if the PS repository name is present, then we need to add it to the list. So before we do that, we're going to say installing Uh, that's right, I need to do find module. Checking for existence of, I need to remember this keyboard. Checking for existence of module. This will be the module name, version, so dependency.name and then dependency.version. It's not find module, it's get module. Let's see. Level modules equal get module list available. I'll copy this and adjust it inside the block here. And dot version equal. Yeah. So that should catch it if it's already installed. Installed. We'll say that it's already installed. We're very specific about the version and the module name. So like we might have a newer version of the module involved, but we're being sticky. So this is opinionated, and my opinion is that you need to use exact versions of modules. This has been informed from some issues that I've run into with automatically getting newer versions of modules module authors being terrible about. This isn't necessarily about public. This is internal as well, but module authors not being good about introducing breaking changes and using breaking change versions to do so. So my opinion is that you should always use the same version and then forcibly update your versions, which is counterintuitive to what a lot of people suggest that you do, like update your modules all the time. But I'm dealing with production code. It can't break because somebody released a new module that's got some breaking change in it that isn't communicated properly through a version number or something. So this should be continue also. Why is that? No, it's because this. All right. So if that's not the case, then what we want to do is we want to actually go through with installing the module, but up here I need to set the params for install. So we're going to have some repeatable parameters. So install dash module name input object minimum version, maximum version, required version, repository. So we're going to include PS Gallery by default. What else we got here? Name, input object, required version, repository, credential, scope. We're not going to use install module, that's right, we're going to use save module because install module sucks. Save module. Path. And in the initialize, I have a local PS module path, so they get saved here. Input object. Repository still there. Proxy credentials on there. Force. Allow pre-release. Accept license. Yeah. Force. Allow pre-release. I really hate this allow pre-release. Like, it's the worst thing ever. Like, if I say that I want to install a pre-release version of the module, then just install the pre-release version of the module. Why are you giving me a hard time? I spelled true right. Force allow pre-release accept license. Because that's also like, I don't know. In my opinion, if I'm doing force, it should do all of this. Like, I shouldn't have to enter, like, This is why force is probably the worst switch on any command in PowerShell. And I've had this discussion multiple times when people want to add force to commands in official PowerShell commandlets. I'm usually 100% against it because it doesn't do what you say. It's like I'll give you an example. There is now a stop. I think it's stop service or something like that. They added force, and that force doesn't do what you think it does. It only does one specific thing in one specific scenario only. Oh yeah, if it has like dependent services or whatever, it stops those as well. Like, and it's on set. Sorry, it's on set service, right? That they added this. So like, it doesn't force the name to change. It doesn't force anything else. But if you tell it like state stop, it'll force that. So it's specific to one specific setting on one specific parameter that it'll force any. It's like, why can't you just have one that says like force stop, right? Like, because that makes sense. It's like just forcing stop. I don't know. I'm ranting a lot today, and it's because I'm working on dependency injection. Every single time that I've worked on dependency injection, I realize how much pain there is in PowerShell. Like, PowerShell get is it's bad. And there's no good dependency management at all in PowerShell. PS Depend's a really good attempt at it, but it doesn't cover all use cases. So yeah, you're almost stuck building your own every single time. And since I can't just copy paste this from my code at work because reasons, right? I have to do all of this from scratch and figure it out again from scratch. So anyways, there's another thing we need to do here. So repository is going to always be PS Gallery, but if we have PS repository name, yeah, it's they added. I don't know if the PR was actually eventually merged. It was like it had been open for like 8 months, but I don't think it's in any of the released versions of PowerShell. It would be in the next release that the force was added to set service. I was very vocal in that PR. I need PS repository name. Yeah, so if PS repository name is set, then we want to set params repository to PS Gallery PS repository name. This allows us to I think that I'm going to prefer my gallery over the PS Gallery. That sounds like a better idea. No, seriously, force. Like, really force. Like, it's just like, I think force in this context, like, just forces it to run again if it's already there. Like, that's all it does. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why do I need all these other things? And I'm not even sure. I think that if you do accept license and there's no license and it's true, it fails. I don't know. We'll see. We'll play with that here in a second, just to be sure. So the other thing that we need to do is if I need to steal this from register PS repository. So we're just gonna reuse the same. So if the PS repository user is present, PS say used. So this updates the credential on it to be there. Does save module have API key? No. So what happens if you require an API key for read? Is that not possible? Because there's definitely NuGet feeds out there that require an API key for read. Jesus. Oh. What we need is we need a major version release of PowerShell Get with a lot of changes made to it, and that would make me happy. Like, what are available? Let's see, get verb. Do we have package as a verb? Verb and then verbose. That's awesome. Package. I wish this also had like what's in the site. What's a good one? Like we need a command to create the packages without publishing. I know everyone's like, oh, we'll just create a folder and publish to the folder. That doesn't work because you have to have all of the prerequisites, all of the required modules and stuff for your module already present in that repository, which is dumb. Like, and there's no way to override that either. Like, let me force to this repository. I know that the required modules are missing. Just let me do that. So no, you can't. You can't just publish, restore, mount, merge. I guess there isn't one for package. Package seems like a good one that we should have. Package and unpackage. Yeah, anyways. Publish, but first. Oh, I could go on all day about how much I disapprove of so many things in here. So, all right, so save module is what we're going to do. Params required version. We need to add that so it's splatted. Required version is dependency version. And name would probably be good. That's probably important. We probably need the module name. That's, should probably start at that. And I should probably put verbose up in the general through. And then, if memory serves me correct, we definitely want to put like a couple of new lines after this because it's like this massive block of text. It's hard to see where one module starts and one ends. Okay, I think that does that. There's one good way to check. Try uninstall module configuration 1.3.1. Is it just version? It's required version. What's this? No match was found for configuration. Good. It's not installed, so that will force it to. I think I was testing and playing around with this in something else earlier, making sure that it got added in. All right, so I am going to call upon this by itself, which means I need to add in. Oh God, I cannot type initialize. It's import dependency config. Create paths. Register PS repository. I just have to make sure that I have all of the tasks that this task depends on running before it. Import dependency config. Alright. So we'll check this out. And if this works right, it should save it to the PS modules folder here. So we'll go to our untitled here. I'm sure this is going to blow up, but hey, there we go. It definitely blew up. What did it blow up on? Importing dependency from path. Ew. Dependency file. Do I not set that in the thing? So dependency file is definitely the dependencies file. Oh, there we go. All right. This is why copy paste is so important. All right, let's try that again. Configuration is not required for this phase. Oh, I need to set the phase because I'm not in a phase. All right, there. And you might be wondering, why do verbose? That's a lot of information that pumps out for the modules. Well, that's because the errors that you get back from save module and install module are crap too. So you can't really troubleshoot it unless you do verbose. And if you're running this in CI, you'll have no clue what's going on. So pretty much anytime you install a module in CI using PowerShell Get, you need to use verbose. But we should have now inside PS modules, there it is. That's good. So the next thing that, actually, if I look at my environment, PS module path, I see it there. So if I do get module refresh list available, name, configuration, and there it is. See some old versions of it lingering around, but 131 is in here. Awesome. Okay, so the other thing to do is to import modules. So we need to make sure that the right version is imported and that we don't automatically get one of the other versions somewhere. Since we're saying that we need this particular version, we need to make sure that it gets imported. So similar to our install one here, we definitely need to get initialized, but most important thing is this one. It's import dependency configuration and initialize. There we go. So we don't need register PS repository. We don't need create paths. We do need initialize and that. So task, name. Initialize automatically sets the, just show this right quick. Right here, it checks the PS module path to see if the local PS module path exists in it, and if it doesn't, it adds it. So if initialize runs, we're always certain to have the this path in the modules path, which means any modules in it should auto load, but we also want to import modules. So we make sure that the right modules are available before we actually do. So importing PowerShell modules for phase copy this. Because if there's no PowerShell, there's no reason to go forward. We can also copy this because it's similar to. Not required for this phase. Skipping. Else. Importing module version. This will be dependency name and dependency version. Module dash force dash name required version. And that should be all that's needed for this one. So all right, all of that so I can run one command. Oh, I need to do scope global on that too. Sounds like a dangerous idea, but it definitely needs to be done. There we go. Since everything runs in like scripts on these, it's kind of neat. If you want the module to exist between runs of invoke build, you need to make sure that you do global. Okay, so now I can go back to update export functions and aliases, which is what spawned off all of that work. Oh my god. This is for each of the function files. We're out of that now. For each import configuration. I can't remember this. Update metadata. Let's see how that one works. Path. So this is the initialize, and this should be the module output manifest file. Property name is going to be functions to export, I believe. Is there a set metadata? Let's update. Alright, should be fine. functions to export. Value, and we want function files. What does value take? Object. I wonder if that'll work with a hash set. Try. There's no harm in trying this. So the other one that I need to update is the aliases to export. Not function files. This should be export functions and export aliases. We're verbose on this. I don't know. All right, so that should, in theory, all that works so I can run these two commands. But anyways, that should do that now. So I should be able to go. So this one actually requires dependencies, so I need to make sure that I do install dependencies. As a required task. And then I should be able to come back over here to this. Update, oh, I already had it. That's fun. Let's do actually, build module should have this now. Let me double check. Build module does not. Let me add it. All right, so just to be on the safe side, we're going to get rid of this. We're going to axe the configuration module. And then we're going to run clean and build module. And that should do all of it. Make sure everything's saved. Yep. Okay, so in theory, everything worked. Didn't throw things about those commands not being available. Did it import the modules? Did I see that somewhere in there? Copying assets, copying base modules, importing configuration. Yep, so imported the right version. Okay, so if I look at PSM1, that should be good. And if I look at the PSD1, I have my public function and my public alias exported in there. Awesome. So that's working through dependency injection and updating module manifest with the exported functions and aliases. So I think that I'm at a decent stopping point for now. There's more stuff that I definitely need to do. This is nowhere near done. But what's left to do for just building a module is doing a version bump, and that involves playing around with Git version and configuring it properly, and also accounting for whether you're running it locally or in CI. So if you run Git version in CI, it does some extra cool stuff for you, like it sets the build version to the version that needs to be run. And since this is an opinionated implementation, you have to use Git common flow on the project. So if you don't use Git common flow, you don't get automatic versioning. But if you do use Git common flow, you get automatically version, and every single build gets a unique version for it that's predictable and all that kind of stuff. So we use tags on master to determine a release. So if I tagged 010, for example, it would release version 010 of the module. So when I did build, it would create the version bump to that. So that's all the next pieces of this. I'm not going to work on that right now. I think I want to put this aside. The experience of working with dependency injection always leaves me sour. So anyways, I appreciate everyone who's watching live, and then anyone who's going to catch the VOD later. So I hope to see you back, and I hope you have a great day.